Hello everyone, Professor Berninger here. Before we get down to our first poem of the semester, Phillis Wheatley's on being brought from Africa to America, I want to tell you why I've chosen this doorway to start our semester and to talk about Phillis Wheatley. This doorway is from 1797. It is on a house which was later owned by Martin Van Buren. This is Martin Van Buren National Historic Site in Kinderhook. The person who built the house was a very wealthy man, Peter Van Ness, Judge Peter Van Ness. And Judge Van Ness, we know from the 1800 United States Census, owned 10 people. He owned 10 enslaved people, slaves. We'll talk more about those terms a little later. We don't know exactly. The census says slaves 10. It doesn't say how many were women or men. Probably at least one or two were women who were domestics. They worked in the house. Maybe there was a male who was a butler or a valet. Others would have worked on the farm. But it's very safe to say that this doorway that I'm touching, this doorknob that I'm touching, was touched. This doorway was walked through by enslaved people. So I'm talking to you today from a place where one person owned others. We tend to think of slavery as this sort of southern institution in plantations. That's what we see in movies, and at least what I learned about in school. But there was a longer time period when people owned other people here in the Hudson Valley. A longer time than in many parts of the South. In the 1600s, the Dutch settlers here owned African slaves. And that occurred right up until 1827. So right here in Kinderhook, New York, Ghent, New York, probably your town in Columbia, Greene County, slaves were owned right up till at least 1827, maybe a little bit after. So that's the truth. And that is why I've come here to talk about Phillis Wheatley and her views on a little sort of on herself as a slave in a couple of her poems. But I just want you to imagine that some more. This doorway that I'm standing in was stood in by people who were owned by other people. So that's why I've picked this spot to kick our semester off. Hello everyone. Welcome to our first video for EN 201, American Literature Colonial to 1899. We're actually doing some colonial works here. The poems of Phillis Wheatley, an enslaved person in Boston for much of her adult life. She was captured as a child in Africa and brought to America. And this, our first poem, is her writing about that. And it's a very interesting little poem. So I'll just work through it here with you, and then we'll talk about some of the great posts you made on the discussion board. On being brought from Africa to America. 'Twas mercy brought me from my pagan land. Okay. Pagan land, most of you know pagans are people who are not generally Christian. They're usually polytheistic. They have a number of gods. Maybe they worship nature. We'll learn more about pagans and druids when we talk about the Maypole of the Marymount with Nathaniel Hawthorne. So she's saying in her first line, 'twas mercy, a good thing, right? Merciful, that brought her from her pagan land, Africa. So as many of you noted in your discussion board posts, she does not speak very highly of where she came from. Taught my benighted soul to understand that there's a God, that there's a Savior too. Benighted. There's no K. B-E-N-I-G-H-T-E-D. Benighted. Of the night. Of darkness. And darkness, I don't know, it shouldn't be this way, but darkness is associated with, you know, bad. Light is good, the dark is bad. The dark side, Darth Vader, right? Luke Skywalker wore a lot of white. Taught my benighted soul to understand. So she came from a pagan land to America, and she learned about God and Jesus, and to her that is a great improvement. Once I redemption neither saw nor knew. She didn't even know she could be redeemed. Some view our sable race. A sable is a black, sort of large feline, tiger sort of thing. Give it a Google. With scornful eye. So some people, this is a shift in the poem, some people view our race with a scornful eye. Quote, their color's a diabolic dye. That's what these people would say. So she's talking about white people. Diabolic is devil, right? Dye is a certain, how you change the color of something. So there's a little inference there that she is a person as well who just happened to be a different color. Remember Christians, Negroes black as Cain. Now you know all about Cain because you just read Genesis, or you will. And Cain was the brother of Abel. He killed Abel. God put a mark upon him and he had to walk around marked. As an African American or black person, or African is a different color. Remember Christians, Negroes black as Cain, may be refined. Refined means to purify, right? You take oil and refine it into gasoline. You refine sugar into a purer form to eat. Refinement is to bring out the best qualities in something. May be refined and join the angelic train. Okay, so many of your comments were good. Amanda asked, how did she view herself? Well, that's a good question. Clearly she views her African self as being lesser, as being sort of living in darkness before finding the light of Christianity. However, to write this kind of poem, and to write a poem to George Washington and students at Harvard, we'll talk about those later, she must have thought pretty highly of herself in order to do that. So, good question, Amanda. Justin senses a little sarcasm. I'm not sure. We'll never know. But remember why she's writing this and who she's writing this for. She's writing this to convince white people to view Africans, African Americans, as savable, as Christian, and that they may be refined to join the angelic train. So for 1773, she is sort of, she's trying to, I do think this is a anti-slavery, pro-equality poem. She's saying black people, though they grew up in darkness, can be like you white people. They can be Christian, right? They can be Christian. They can ride the train to heaven. They'll be there with you. So that's what she's getting at here. But Justin, whether she's sincere about putting down her past, it's hard to know, but based on her other poems with Christian themes, she probably does view her past as being not so good. Emily Kratz. It seems like this was written by a white person. Of course, it is not. She does assert a certain equality of blackness here at the end. And Emily brought up used a very good phrase called Stockholm Syndrome. More recently, people were kidnapped and held hostage of sorts in Stockholm, Sweden. And those people came to identify with their captors and not, revolt or maybe even feel captured. So Stockholm Syndrome is when you identify with the people who have captured you, and you sort of almost join them and go along with them in their beliefs. So I think that's a very good concept to bring up. Emily, Phyllis did take on the belief system of her oppressors, her owners of Christianity. Whether you think it's good that she became Christian or not, that's up to all of you. But I think Stockholm Syndrome is a great concept to bring up. And Bella, you really prompted my thinking. Were slaves religious? And I sent out through an email, and it's on the Blackboard announcements, a link to a story on public radio that an expert will give you the answer to that question. But a quick summary, in general, yes, owners would read Bible stories to slaves who are primarily, or enslaved people. We'll have a guest in a moment talking about slaves versus enslaved people, those terms. They would read stories to the enslaved people, And some of those stories would be very appealing to someone who's enslaved. Think of the slave Jews who were slaves in Egypt, and Moses led them out through the parting of the Red Sea to freedom. So, and the idea of redemption, the idea of finding a better life later on in heaven, that's probably very appealing to someone who's owned by someone else. So many slaves, enslaved people did take on Christianity, Christian values, and of course many the African American churches today are in many ways still very, very vibrant in our own communities and around America. On the sort of the flip side of things, many ministers, white ministers, were very pro-slavery, and they would preach from the pulpit every Sunday morning about how great slavery was for everybody, that slavery was supported by the Bible, what a great Christian thing slavery was. They probably would have read this poem in a way like, yeah, look at that. Look what great things. We brought this girl over from Africa and we saved her, right? By making her an enslaved person. Yippee, we saved her. Slavery's good. So this poem could easily have been taken that way. I see it maybe with my 2020 eyes. That's kind of funny. I'm talking about the year 2020. Believe me, my eyes are anything but 2020. I see her being more assertive here, particularly at the end of the poem, that we can be refined like you, that we're not that different from you white Christian people. So, sometimes poems are like those Rorschach tests, ink blot tests. You look at it and, different people see different things. So that certainly holds up true in all of poetry. But I think it's a fabulous poem. I think your comments on the discussion board were absolutely terrific. And I think it's a perfect place to start with an African American, really African woman, an enslaved person in Boston. We have her voice in these poems, and we also are learning about the people who her audience, the primarily white Christian audience that she would have been writing for. So there you have it. Phillis Wheatley's on Being Brought from Africa to America.